I'm excited, so excited, Ceilidh, to talk about your memoir, creative nonfiction book, Vagabond, Venice Beach, Slab City and Points in Between. It was such a great read, and I didn't know that I needed to be in California these last couple of weeks, but it was great. Before we get officially started, I'm going to acknowledge the land on which I am situated. Please feel free, if you would like to include a land acknowledgement, you can write it into the chat. I am sitting right now in Tkaronto, which for thousands of years has been the traditional land of the Wendat, Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation. I am specifically in Adubakok, the place of the alders in the Michisagic language. Both are still home to many Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island, and I am very grateful to have the opportunity to work in the community on their territory. Ceilidh Michelle, welcome to Junction Reads. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it. Before we get started, I always spend a few minutes talking with the writer about what they're reading right now. Gives me an opportunity to steal some ideas and add to my to be read list.
Well, my to read, or my reading list right now is so huge. I'm currently just reading a lot of random stuff. I'm reading Akira. I'm reading Little Women again because it's so cozy. I'm reading a book called 1968, The Year That Changed the World, because it's nice to know that once that was possible. And I'm reading, I'm also reading a book called In the Garden of the Beasts by Eric Lawson, I think, or Larson. Sorry if I'm getting that wrong. Also about the rise of Nazi Germany, which is also very creepy to read right now and kind of chilling. So lots of light reading material. I'm all over the map.
Do you find you read mostly fiction or mostly nonfiction, or are you really balanced?
I try to read a little bit of both. Like, I like reading a little bit of biography and then kind of coupling that with some really immersive fiction. I usually have like 4 or 5 books on the go.
Oh, nice. That's good. I'm like a one. I can throw short stories into a novel or a nonfiction book. But if I'm reading one book, I really have to get into it and be in it, I guess.
Yeah, totally.
I'm excited to hear you read from Vagabond. And Before I do that, is it okay if I share your biography with everybody?
Yes, of course.
Ceilidh Michelle is the author of the novel Butterflies, Zebras, Moonbeams, which was shortlisted for the Hugh MacLennan Award for Fiction. Ceilidh has had work published in Entropy, Long Reads, The Void, Broken Pencil, Matrix Magazine, McGill University Scrivener Creative Review, Cactus Press, and Lantern Magazine. Ceilidh holds an MSc in Creative Writing from the University of Edinburgh and a BA in Creative Writing from Concordia. Ceilidh calls Montreal, Quebec home. It's all you.
Okay. Well, I think I'm just going to dive right in, and I'm going to read a passage from kind of the first third of the book, just to kind of paint the scene on what a day in the life was like. And every day was kind of different, but this is one of them. One morning, Leo and I were walking down the alley behind Abbot Kinney and found a garbage bag with freshly laundered blankets inside. Someone must have put it out for people such as ourselves. Nearby, we found a swath of new cardboard. We bundled all of this up and hid it for later that night. When it got dark, we came and grabbed it, setting up a bed in the corner of the library parking lot under the sweep of a cottonwood tree. The nights before, we'd been sleeping by the canals behind a dumpster, but there were knife fights down under the bridge where people never slept and slashed at anything that came too close, blasting their stereo music and screaming long into the night. The only good thing about being behind the dumpster was that we'd found a shopping cart. It had been floating half in the canal water, lacy with weeds and chunky with rust. There were only 3 working wheels on it, but Leo said a shopping cart was a valuable commodity. When we found the bedding, we packed up our bedroom and pushed it away in the cart. On the boardwalk, I saw Alex and his girlfriend Izzy, her dark hair hanging in bunches. She said she was from Israel, and the nickname was a logical extension. I had no idea what her real name was, but I was getting used to that. When Alex and Izzy saw me, they laughed and called me a home bum. I didn't know what that meant. Look, said Alex. He pointed at an old man, slouching past, gray hair flattened to his skull. The man carried a plastic bag full of rattling cans along the ridge of his spine. That's a home bum. You know where he's headed right now? To get his shopping cart. He's going to put his cans in it and roll it around. He's probably only got a good 5 years left. And you know where he's going to spend them? Right here, doing the exact same shit. Alex came from New Hampshire and sneered at anyone who stayed in one place for longer than 2 weeks. The others were also defiantly proud of their wandering. They refused to go easy. Leo's bed and shopping cart and everything else Leo did was part of something they didn't want and couldn't understand. I wondered if I was making the wrong choice going around with him, but I didn't trust myself to go it alone. So that's kind of, that was one morning. And do I have time to read a little bit more?
You do, yeah. I'm already jamming my brain with more questions adding to the list.
Okay, well, I guess since it's winter, I'll read a winter scene. I mean, it all kind of started in January, but this one takes place over Christmas. I bought myself some Christmas cigarettes from Henry's Market and was on my way to meet Crielle behind Bench Lady's bench when someone called out to me, "Hey, girly." It was Tony. He manned a booth on the boardwalk called Heaven's Pennies. Heaven's Pennies was some kind of soup kitchen, nothing more than a folding table and a tarp. In his mid-40s, gold chains around his thick neck, Tony hailed from Mar Vista. When he wasn't running Heaven's Pennies, he could be seen roaring around the streets of Venice Beach in his busted-up white truck, going to AA meetings at any hour of the day. Tony kept the back of his truck loaded down with a crusty black cooking pot, plastic ladles, bushels of wilting vegetables, bags of stale buns, and crates upon crates of ramen noodles from the 99-cent store. He'd come walking along the boardwalk like the Pied Piper, followed by a pack of drunk punks and hippie kids. Tony set up shop anywhere he could find space on the boardwalk, beside sunglasses stands or people with sandwich boards advertising medical-grade marijuana, dreadlocked women behind tables loaded down with crystals, hip-hop artists holding up their jeans with one hand and selling their homemade CDs with another. Every morning around 6 or 7, Tony squeezed his table into the boardwalk's barrage and began making his free soup, turning on the hot plate hooked up to his rattling generator. Tony dumped whatever he could find into his soup. Raisins, cherry tomatoes, cinnamon, celery, it all went in, bubbling up with an odor of scorched salt and starch. During the crowded afternoons on the boulevard, locals and drifters were united by their dripping styrofoam cups. Tony smoked menthol cigarettes so nobody would bum them. He called out to everyone who walked the boardwalk, celebrities, tourists, punks on skateboards. "Free soup, made by the grace of God." More often than not, Tony set up the table and recruited someone from the boardwalk to guard it while he went to meet his sponsor. That Christmas Day, he made a sign from a piece of cardboard and drew coins with wings all over it with a black marker. I could smell the boiling soup before I'd even reached the table. Behind the boardwalk lay the cold dampness of the sand, the waves making a soft shh noise. The palm trees hung down like old curtains, and the pink afternoon sun painted itself slowly across the dome of space. Men were always calling to me on the boardwalk. I had trained myself to keep my eyes focused ahead. I didn't want to get involved in whatever Tony wanted me to be involved in, but Christmas fooled me into a sense of obligation. "Want to watch the table?" Tony asked me. He was gone 3 hours. I kept the soup going, and a woman named Lisa, who'd grown up with Tony in South Central, came along to help me dish up cups and pass them around. Heaven's Penny usually gathered a crowd, hangers-on, locals, and hippies. An actor from an old detective show brought down a couple garbage bags full of clothes and stuffed animals and coloring books and dumped the contents on the ground. Curious tourists gathered, wanting him to write his name on their stomachs, arms, old socks, lunch boxes, and then dispersed again, a school of colorful fish flitting around the boardwalk. Lisa knelt, extracting mittens and hats from the actors' garbage bags and passing them around, even though the winter day was warm. I left the pot of soup and went over to help her. Good holiday? She asked me. Lisa had one of Tony's menthols hanging out of the corner of her mouth. The smoke softened the hardness of her face. She wore men's pants and a denim shirt, a long braid of hair hanging down her back. Lisa said things simply, and she wanted the same given back to her, plain speak and respect. This made her easy to talk to. Good enough, I said. Christmas got too much to live up to, said Lisa, flicking her smoke out of the water. A group of hippies passed by, shouting about a producer's $100 bill giveaway. The holy man had been seen on 3rd and Rose. Someone else said he'd been spotted last year in front of Big Daddy's eating a hamburger. Then along came Goldie, a boardwalk troll, pulling a little red wagon behind her. She begged change from everyone, but if anyone gave her coins, she'd throw them back in their face, yelling, "Cheapskate!" She preferred bills. I'd seen her earlier on the basketball courts, racing around the blacktop, so fast her wagon was up, on 2 wheels, shoving as much stuff into it as it would fit. Mittens, teddy bears, manicure sets, toothbrushes, mini shampoos. It's for my cousin, she kept saying, although no one had asked. Now Goldie circled Heaven's pennies. As I stirred the soup, she shoved a packet of string beans and a bag of radishes into the corner of her wagon. One of Goldie's friends came along next, a person so old and buried in cardigans they'd been relieved of a gender. Come to Henry's and go halves on smokes? They opened up their hands like dirty napkins to reveal a palmful of quarters. Goldie eyed her heavy wagon and then eyed me. I'll leave this here, she said loudly and indicated her wagon with her toe. Just leave this here a minute. The late afternoon sun came out, glancing off storefront windows, orange dapples of light, coming down like fat coins tossed from the sky. The warmth of Los Angeles in my bones, like good medicine. Heaven's pennies felt peaceful for a minute. I'll stop there, but basically the scene devolves in chaos. And
there are a lot of chaotic, scary moments in Vagabond. What I loved most was, the novel itself takes place over such a short period of time, but there are as many characters, like interesting characters, as there are days in the book. I wanted to talk about those characters because even though some of them don't seem important, there are moments and interactions, however fleeting, that I feel might still be with you, if you know what I mean, like just and not just as a memory in Vagabond, but an experience that you carry with you. So I wanted to talk about the characters and who is still in your life, maybe who you're still in contact with, and maybe who that you're not in contact with left the most indelible mark on you.
I think as writers and storytellers, I think you're always going to carry elements of your experiences with you always. So I definitely carry everything I've ever lived with me all the time. And some of that will probably come out over the years in different incarnations. I think because of social media, I think we're able to sort of have these pseudo connections with people. And so I think that I've been able to reach out to people in a way after all of this has happened. One of the people in the book actually just reached out to me the other day and they said, "Hey, I saw, what have you been up to? I saw that you wrote this book." And I was like, "Oh shit, you're going to read this." You're in it, by the way. And so that was kind of interesting. I don't know. They said they're going to read it. So I'll be interested to see how they react. But yeah, some people I've stayed in touch with, and some people, all the people in the book live in America and I live in Canada. As time goes on, America is starting to seem like it's further away than ever before. So it's hard to reconnect with some of those people. And and our lifestyles at that time are so transient that even if I wanted to reach out to people now, I don't even know where I'd find them.
Oh, yeah, or how you could.
Yeah,
And there are so many characters in the book who have names that aren't their names, right?
exactly. Yeah, I mean, for our own safety, or for a lot of people's safety, people had run away, or people, were evolving who they were and their identities. And so a lot of the people that I knew at that time who went by certain names no longer do. So that also makes it interesting trying to track people down. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you were writing, because I mean, it takes place over 3 to 4 months, as I mentioned, but so much happens. And I want to talk about how, and I agree with you, as writers, stuff just sticks in there. But I want to talk about how you recorded these memories, how they came back to you, and how they got interpreted in Vagabond.
Well, I carried a notebook with me everywhere I went, and anything interesting I wrote down. I love, even to this day, I love writing down interesting dialogue and words that I overhear out of context. I find that really interesting. So I was definitely writing down everything, sort of like a travel journal, I guess. And then I would just write down interesting things that I saw. So I was writing all the time. There was just so many weird things that I couldn't not write down. And I'm so grateful to my younger self that I had the um, just the wherewithal to take notes,
Yeah.
because now I had this record, which is really nice. And also everyone I was kind of traveling with was really artistic as well. So in the book there is uh, this escapade that we all go on, and it's three of us, and we're taking the train through Compton and everything, and we all three of us kept a notebook, and we passed it back and forth and back and forth. And so there was a lot of perspectives that I was able to get from other people as well, which is really cool.
Oh, so they wrote in your journal, you guys kind
Yeah,
of wrote each other's. Oh, that's incredible.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it definitely at times there felt the voice felt very intimate, and then there were these absences, and I could feel that either something happened that wasn't being recorded, or days passed when nothing really significant happened. And I love that disconnectedness, because it felt like a real experience. Like I was really moving through the time with you
Mm-hmm.
in an authentic way, right? And not just, Tuesday, January 7th, and 9
Yeah.
p.m. or whatever. It felt real and quite novelistic in its approach, which I liked.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like now, it's you're in these situations of emergency and survival, and so days just go past. I mean, days just fall off that way, and so yeah, I find a lot of weird parallels with living right now and living then.
Yeah, definitely. There was a quote that we shared on social media, and it was that as soon as I read it about time and how important it is, and yet how fleeting, I was like, oh, that is exactly what we're going through right now.
Yeah,
Another,
I mean, not to sound like a flake. I just, I don't
yeah,
really believe in the linearity of time. It doesn't really feel like that sometimes. I don't know.
no, exactly. Well, and especially because you can move from a Monday to a Monday and absolutely nothing has happened, or you can move from a Monday to a Monday and a month's
Your
worth of
life is
things happen.
transformed. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Poverty is a big, I don't want to say theme, but poverty's at the heart of Vagabond, and homelessness, and everyone feeling like they can't escape the cycle of hunger, addiction, and shame. And at one point you say yourself, needing charity was a constant shame when you were out there. How did this experience shape your perspective on homelessness at the time, and how do you think it's evolved since that experience, if it's not the same?
Well, I think back then I think that there was less of a cost. So, being homeless was circumstantial and I could bounce back unscathed really easily. And it
Mhm.
was fine. I was 20. I had no sense of consequence and I could just bounce from place to place and crash on people's couches and that was fine. I think as I get older though, I get angrier and angrier.
Mhm.
And I had to really control myself when I was writing Vagabond to not just go on a rant, about how human rights, like that's housing. It's a human right. I can't even wrap my mind around the fact that sometimes people in this world believe that other people don't deserve water or shelter, or
Yeah.
it's something I can't even conceptualize. So um, yeah, it's just something. As I've gotten older, I've kind of had to marry this sense of defeat with a sense of injustice, but like also like what can I do, and what can be done. And I hate the sterility of corporate gentrification, and I'm watching cities fall. So it's really, really um, it's just totally disheartening. And I don't want to be defeated by that. So I think as I get older, I'm really looking into what I can do.
Yeah. And it's hard because we really are, and I felt this in witnessing a lot of the characters in your book not being seen and not being witnessed and being ignored. That to me is like the oh, defeat, I think, in
Mhm.
homelessness and climate change and all of these big social justice and human rights issues, as you say. The defeat is that people are just unwilling to see,
Mhm.
and the distance between us and them needs to be as wide as it can be in order for us, and I don't mean you and I, but in order for the us to feel like they're not implicated in
Mhm. Mhm.
the them in what homeless people or marginalized people are the circumstances in which they live. I loved that. I enjoyed that the characters got to speak that for you,
Mhm.
and that it wasn't I don't want to say the word political, but that it wasn't a platform, that it really and truly was all of
No.
these characters
Yeah.
living and
Yeah.
expressing who they are in
Well,
that
and
way.
I hope they feel that they got to speak for themselves, because so much of that was not my own ideology, and I just feel like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of like weird ageism with homelessness. It's like that's something that you're just expected to outgrow, and it's fine for young people to be bohemian and be footloose and embrace poverty and this hashtag wanderlust or whatever the hell it is. But I
Mhm.
think the elderly are out on the streets as well, and we don't protect our elders. And I think that that's something also that I wanted to address in the book, because I hung out a lot with older people.
Mhm.
Like, it was a real mixed bag of characters down there, and some were young, but many were old. And I think that those are the majority of people who are on the street.
Mhm. Slab City, that was the time where I really felt that the disconnection or the misunderstanding of homelessness, right? That uh, kind of abrasive uh, relationship between choice and not having choice, right? And in some situations, the older woman, I can't even remember her name. Sorry, I feel
Angel.
bad about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then there was the guy who was going back to Slab City, returning to Slab City, and that to me brought up the question of homelessness as a choice or as a need, because there's isn't safety anywhere else.
Mhm.
I loved the Slab City sections. I thought it was a really important part of the book.
Thank you.
There, speaking of vulnerability, there's a moment in Vagabond where Jules says it's best for a woman to be invisible. Being a girl is a dangerous trade. And again, I'm thinking about you as a young woman. I happen to have a daughter who is the age you were when you were living Vagabond. And so I was like, yeah, oh my God, that must have been totally scary. And I wanted to ask you, what was the scariest moment outside of the running into drug dealers and
I think it's weird. I think the scariest moment for me was when I got home. And, the ending of the book is, I won't give it away for those who haven't read it, but the ending of the book was really sobering for me. To realize that some people would make it and some people wouldn't. And I actually don't think that any of it really caught up with me until later. I think I was quite foolish and just so young. So when I was out on the street, it never really occurred to me to feel fear necessarily. I mean, I think there was one night when I was sleeping alone, and I had a switchblade with me, and a group of men walked past, and I was terrified that they were going to spot me. And then, you kind of start to realize that all of these true crime stories and things that you hear, those are real stories. Those are real women. Those are real sisters and daughters. And, people go missing all the time. And I don't think that as a young person, you necessarily are able to really understand what that might mean.
right.
What the consequences of that are. So I think, yeah, I don't think I ever really had a moment where I was like, oh my God, I'm really scared, but I think it caught up to me later in PTSD.
Right. It's like, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I slept so soundly in a concrete underground parking lot.
Well, I don't know about soundly, but I mean,
Yeah.
the fact that I was trying to sleep there at all, I mean,
Yeah. And so the flip side to that is, are there any experiences that you wish you could go back and relive? Any experiences that you wish you could just kind of drop yourself into now as an older, more mature Ceilidh, and that you would do differently?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a complex question because I think so
Yeah.
much has changed for me circumstantially that I don't think I could really go back and do it. I couldn't physically. I couldn't even do that to myself. But
Right.
I guess, yeah, I don't know. I guess if you look back on those kinds of situations, I mean, for me, I think maybe I wouldn't have always tried to find a boy or a man to protect me. I think, the way that I was raised in a very overbearing evangelical environment, it was always that you needed to either be subservient to a man or you needed to find a man to protect you. So even in this most vulnerable and independent living situation that I found myself in, my first MO is to find a male to protect me. And
Yeah.
that so often backfires on young women because men are dangerous a lot of the time. So, um, you have to be really careful around them, especially ones that you don't know so anyway.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. The expectation of like what, not immediately, but 2 or 3 days in, and then it's like, okay, now what am I going to get now that I have protected you for 2 days or whatever? And then you're just like, oh shit, that's not why I entered this little relationship.
Yeah, but I will say, I guess to answer your previous question, if I could go back, and when I do take what I've learned from those situations, I do find seeking out women is really something that I've learned to do. Seeking out older women, especially if I'm in a vulnerable situation, and I've gotten a lot of good mentors that way. But especially like to young girls on the street, seeking out women is your best bet.
Yeah. And that's so funny because that's the first thing. It was the first thing I was told to teach my child, right? Because I had my first child quite young, and I was constantly anxious and worried. And it was the first thing I was told to tell my child, that if we are in public, if you get lost, if for some reason we become separated, you should find a woman, and find a woman with children preferably, or just find a woman anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. so it's interesting how, and I'm sure I'm not the only parent who's taught my kid that. So it's interesting how at some point in time, women default to that, that,
Each other,
yeah, interesting. Got a million things to think about. The best, the question I have, which is probably, I know the answer, I think, because of all the research that I did, but you embarked on this journey to find this yogi in California. And I love, it's the best part for me that you didn't get there. The anticipation at the beginning of going to find him and then, not doing it, I thought had potential for comedy, and like, I loved it. And when you said to somebody at one, oh, I'm looking for a yogi, and you're not going. So my question is, do you practice yoga? Are you?
I do practice yoga. I do. Yeah, I don't know. I find like, I find a person's spiritual journey kind of hard to talk about. I think it's kind of private, but also I think it's such a blundering trek, it's so, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And I think that was really reflected in my experiences in Vagabond, just that. And also, like, there's so much subculture built up around spirituality now, it's expensive and it's inaccessible. And so many searchers have to pay some sort of premium or wear the right clothes, or, it's so I think spirituality functions better when it's quiet and done in private,
Yes. Yeah. I totally agree with you. It's really hard, especially with how commercial yoga and fitness and everything has become, and how there is this desperate need to tie it to spiritual growth, right? Because we can no longer talk about it just making you a better person, that you have to go on a journey or a spiritual journey with your physical metamorphosis or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, perfect example of that is one of Lululemon's slogans is "Friends are more important than money," and their yoga pants are like $100. So, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. That one of the best things I've found at Value Village, we're a big Value Village family, is a Lululemon hoodie for my husband that clearly, and how sometimes Value Village, they know the value of it.
Yeah.
And so it's like $19.99 or something ridiculous. The best was finding this hoodie, and it was like $6.99.
Oh, so someone priced it realistically.
Yeah. And I just remember going to the checkout and thinking, oh, I beat Lululemon somehow. Look.
Don't even get me started on Value Village and Salvation Army and their whole, anyway, that's another conversation for another time.
Yeah, totally. Kaylee, I'm not, again, on top of myself in asking if anyone else has any questions while I ramble on with my own.
All good. I'll always catch you. I'll always catch you towards the end if there are some. We have 2 questions right now. The first question is from David, and David asks, what are your thoughts about the ability of literature and writing to make social change? Is it as powerful a tool today, more than yesterday, or less? Or do you think that our stories merely exist for our own personal feelings?
That's a very good question. I hope that writing has an impact when it comes to social justice, definitely. I know that there are a lot of gatekeepers always, and I know that it's really hard for writers to survive financially. So one would hope that they would have the time, which is, the ultimate gift. But I do believe that, I always have hope, but also, I'm seeing a lot of people getting the ability to speak now in a way that we never had before. So especially in Canada, I'm really proud of what people are doing in publishing right now. They're really working hard to make sure that there's justice and equality. And I'm very grateful to everyone in Canada who's doing that right now. And also, yeah, definitely writing should be about your personal feelings for sure. There's so many fictional books I love to just sink into like a warm bath, and I'm so grateful for the escapism. So please, more fantasy and fiction and all kinds of stuff. It's great.
Yeah. No, I love that too. The voices that are being amplified right now. I mean, I certainly wish that there wasn't any of those other people, without naming all the names that I'm sure that you and I agree exist and shouldn't exist. As free.
Well, I went to university in the liberal arts.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Lots of them. Yeah. Kaylee, sorry. I'm like so bad at stopping myself from talking. It's terrible.
That's okay. That's why I pop myself in there, and that's your signal that there's another question. This question comes from Tony, and Tony asks, you mentioned hearing from one of the people that you included in your stories in Vagabond. Have you heard from any other folks included in the stories and their thoughts, or maybe even from people who went through a similar experience? How did you interact with them, and how did those conversations go?
Wow. Yeah, I definitely, I was in touch more with people after the fact, after I came home. Yeah, we'd speak a lot on Facebook and stuff, and I don't really use Facebook anymore. And so a lot of those channels kind of closed for me. But yeah, I definitely, I was in communication with Half Beach for a while, and Little Wing wound up having puppies, and so yeah, so there was a lot of cool stuff I was able to keep abreast of for a while, and then after a couple of years or whatever, things just kind of petered out. But yeah, people can still sometimes find me online and throw me a message, so I'm always glad when they do that.
Yeah. Half Beach, I was going to ask you about them because your connection was so loving and intense, and I was going to ask you if you were in touch with them and what your relationship ended up being. But so I'm glad that you mentioned that. Yeah. I have just a funny thing that I want to talk about, because at a couple of times in the book, someone says, I bought menthol cigarettes because they're not as likely to get stolen. And yet everybody smokes menthol cigarettes in Vagabond, which I was just like, well, then everyone's loving menthol cigarettes. And so I wanted to ask you, did you smoke menthol cigarettes while you were down there?
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things where you have a preference and a standard, and then you just take whatever you can get. So
yeah.
Even at Christmas, when I'm turning up my nose and saying, "Oh, I'm a vegetarian," and then it's like, you know what? You're gonna eat what you can find, okay? So relax. But also, it's just, it was funny to me that everyone said, "Oh, I don't like menthol cigarettes," and then as soon as they're offered a menthol cigarette, they'll take it. So
yeah.
It was a little in joke for my own self, I guess.
I know. I loved it. I laughed so hard, just as a person who smoked. Anytime I met somebody in my 20s who smoked menthol cigarettes, it was like, seriously, how's that even possible?
Yeah, they're pretty nasty.
Yeah. But my great aunt smoked them, and in the days when we all sat around the kitchen table and everybody was smoking. So
well, they're supposed to be fragrant or something, I guess.
Yeah, or good for your breath, like gave you minty fresh breath, probably. That's, I'm sure, what doctors told people back then.
Oh yeah,
definitely. Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much. This feels like it went by quickly, and yet I feel like I need to go and pick up Vagabond and read it again, some of the sections. We are going to, because we've got half a dozen people here, I think. We've got, Karina gave me 2 copies of Vagabond to raffle. I'm going to raffle one off now, if this is okay with you. And then I'm going to do kind of a social media push and see if I can get people to share the video and share some stuff, and we'll raffle off the second copy this week or next weekend, maybe.
Okay.
So Kaylee, we will do one raffle, one copy.
All right. All right. The winner for this week is Tanya Rimanich.
Nice.
I like how she made it sound like they don't know you.
Thank you. That's wonderful.
Congratulations.
Sorry, I had my camera off because I'm eating soup.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. I look forward to reading it.
Congratulations. If
Thank
you can email me your mailing address to junctionrights@gmail.com, that would be great. I will forward it to Karina and that'll be sent off to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
That's all I've got, Kaylee.
Okay. So that's
I really appreciate being able to sit down and talk to you about Vagabond. You're working on a novel right now.
I am. Yes, I'm working on a novel and I'm working on some kids' books because they're so much fun to be inside right now and hiding from the world. Yeah, so it's really fun. Yeah.
Like young kids' books or YA?
Yeah, young kids' books, picture books. Yeah.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. And you are still working on a novel, or are you primarily focusing on the kids' books?
No, I'm still working on the novel. Yeah, it's fun to try and stay motivated right now, I gotta say.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, that's that whole waking up in the morning and just really hoping that today's going to be the day that something gets done.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful that I can wake up in the morning now. It's a good feeling. So yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I really
thank you very much. And I will tag you on social media with everything that comes out as a result of this great reading and conversation. Thank you again.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone.
Thanks to the other Kaylee up in the corner.
And thank you, Kaylee. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay. Have a good night.
Thank you everybody for coming. Have a good night.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye everyone. We'll see you in February for Lindsay.